Now this is a 100% intimidation shot. We're showing that Khan has a more powerful vessel than Kirk does. You've got these big cannon-looking phaser banks here, and this enormous photon torpedo mounting up here. Clearly a heavier-armed ship than Kirk's Enterprise.
Half impulse power. Let's be friends.
Slowing to 1/2 impulse power.
Reliant in our section, this quadrant, sir. And slowing.
Sir, may I quote General Order 12 on the approach of any vessel when communications have not been established?
Lieutenant, the Admiral is well aware of the regulations.
Aye, sir.
That look, though, the way she rolls her eyes so hard at Kirk and Spock out of their view. She's like, regulations are there for a reason. I don't know why you aren't doing this. Kirk, you're human, and Spock, you're half human. I think we're going to see later how Kirk gives her credit for saving the ship.
Is it possible that comm systems failed?
It would explain a great many things.
They're requesting communication, sir.
Let them eat static.
They're still running with shields down.
Of course, we are one big happy fleet.
Now bear in mind, the lore back in the 80s and 90s about Star Trek was that the Federation, just before Kirk's 5-year mission, had just come off the 4 years war with the Klingon Empire. It was an all-out war, fought along the frontiers, and the Federation came out with their border secured. Klingons got pushed back some. And so now, yeah, they're relaxed, they're kicking back, and the Federation is one big happy family. Now this shot is not only a shot to show how close the ships are getting, but it also compares the Enterprise with its few itty-bitty phasers, supposedly, and one smaller photon torpedo bay, showing it is outclassed by the Reliant.
This is damn peculiar. Yellow alert.
And that, Trekkers and Trekkies, is the order that saved the Enterprise. I'll show you why.
Energize defense fields.
Now, these defense fields are the force fields that keep stuff from getting sucked into space when the ship gets a sudden hole in it for some reason. They provide some degree of protection for the ship from energy and matter colliding with it, like phasers or photon torpedoes, though they're nowhere near as strong as the actual deflector shields that they wish they'd put up. They are shown in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, when a few times when ships take bad hits there, the force fields go up and keep people from getting sucked out. I think that in Next Generation and Voyager era times, that ships have so much power to them and their energizers are so much more efficient that these things are always on. And it's like even contributing to the structural integrity of the ship. I think these are either, I mean, they might be different from the structural integrity fields, or they might be the structural integrity fields just running at a lower level or something. But basically, whenever there is an emergency and there's suddenly a hole in the side of the ship, then the force fields click on, or in this case, they're turned on to prevent oxygen, tools, and personnel from being sucked into space. You can read all about this. Go ahead and hit pause right now when I'm done explaining this, but the Starfleet Training Command Officer Requirements Trek fan art published back in the late 80s or 90s explains the two different forms of force fields and deflector shields or deflector screens. These are the two primary defense systems of the ship. Go ahead and pause it right now and take a read at that if you want.
I'm getting a voice message. They say their chambers coil is overloading their comm system.
Spock.
Scanning. The coil emissions are normal.
They still haven't raised their shields.
Raise ours.
Now, what I've done here, I've taken out Khan's part of the introduction to the battle. I want you to see just how fast things happen for Kirk and crew, from the Reliant raising shields and locking phasers and firing, so you get a better idea of just how little time Kirk had to react and just how much of a sucker punch this was.
Their shields are going up. They're locking phasers.
Raise shields.
Now, I realize the situation's different, but if Kirk had not gone to yellow alert and put the defensive fields on, activated, you would have had a scene like this in Star Trek Wrath of Khan. You would have had the engineering crew flying out the side of the ship. Instead, they were contained by the defense fields, which prevented the atmosphere, parts, and crew from getting sucked out into space. In Star Trek Generations, we saw the defense fields at work, where the crew was able to go down and look through the hole in the side of the ship that the funky electrical storm had caused, and see that Kirk was no longer there. Hence, the defense fields help reinforce the ship, they help keep stuff inside the ship, but they aren't as strong in defense as the defensive shields. Again, here we see that the phaser fire from Khan's ship, from those mega phasers up on the weapons bar, have gone through the hull. They're hitting the actual instrumentation, the drive shaft of the warp core and everything, and the defensive fields were not enough to stop it from penetrating. They were strong enough, however, to keep the crew from getting sucked out, like I showed earlier.
Sure, get those shields up. Trying, sir.
A bunch of screaming cadets who can't breathe, wondering if this material is going to be on the final. Here's Mr. Scott putting his respirator on, hoping that the cadets follow suit. Now, anyone who has studied or been in the Navy and served in deep blue operations with ships will know that the first few moments, the first few seconds of damage control are the most crucial, and getting the initial damage from spreading, getting the initial leaks, fires and everything under control. And when these cadets panicked, granted, they weren't ready for this. They thought they were just going to be cruising around Jupiter and pushing some buttons. But they're now in a life or death situation, and Mr. Scott has to start screaming at them to return to their posts, because he knows what they need to learn and what they're going to learn very suddenly right now. Yeah, all these cadets just bolting for the doors and climbing up the ladders. They no doubt contributed to the Enterprise not being as ready to face Khan when they finally did get their damage control done and get Kirk and McCoy and crew back on board.
I can't get power, sir. Scotty! Turn off those damn channels!
Mr. Scott on the screen.
We're just hanging on, sir. Main energizers out!
Now, everyone struggles with what this thing is called: the matter, antimatter reactor, the warp drive, the warp core. That all applies, but I think the most accurate name for it is what Scotty calls it here, the energizer. This is the mixing of the matter and antimatter through the dilithium crystal that channels the plasma conduits into a variety of other big and small conduits to power the ship. This is why Sulu can't get power for the shields. This is why they've only got enough power for a couple phaser shots, which are not enough against Reliance shields. The main power is out. The energizer's been hit.
Try auxiliary power!
Auxiliary power is power drawn from the impulse engines. It's considered an emergency measure. It's not one they do when they're under normal deep space or condition green operations. It's not needed, it's not used, but when the energizer's out, then they need to tap it. I think this is the kind of thing where only the captain can authorize its use. Like helicopters and ships have an extra fuel reserve or something that they're only allowed to use in emergency or wartime situations. That's why Kirk has to keep authorizing Scotty to use auxiliary power.
Damage report.
Before I go off on my rant that I'm about to go off on, I just want to point out that these two hits in the saucer section appear to be in the areas of the power distribution to the phaser banks and the batteries. I'll compare those two red marks to a hole in the hull it shows in just a few seconds. But also interestingly here, you can see where the Reliance phasers tore right through the secondary hull on starboard and port side.
They knew exactly where to hit us.
This is the one line that bugs me the most. Come on, Spock. Everyone knows where the main energizer is. If the sensors on a starship can distinguish a human from a Vulcan, from a Romulan, then the sensors can tell where your main power drive is. Plus, according to Star Trek, the original series, the Energizer and the engineering section has been in that part of the ship forever. Back in the Ultimate Computer episode from the original series, the M5 hits the Lexington in the engineering section, and this is the computer graphic that was shown with it, showing right where the main Energizer is in the refit Enterprise as well. Everybody knows where the Energizer is. Everybody knows how to deplete the power from a ship. This line bugs me. They could have just done something else right there. Just focused on the who and why or something.
Who knew where to hit us and why?
Thank you, Kirk.
One thing is certain. We cannot escape on auxiliary power.
Visual. Sulu, divert all power to phasers.
Too late.
Hang on!
One thing I've never figured out is why Khan targeted the lower right-hand corner of the view screen of the bridge.
Johnny! What's left? Just the battery, sir. I can have auxiliary power in a few minutes. We don't have a few minutes! Can you give me phaser power? A few shots, sir.
Not enough against their shields.
The hell are they?
Admiral, the commander of the Reliant is signaling. He wishes to discuss terms of our surrender.
The opposite of George Takei's "oh my" face is that one right there. Now this is where Kirk is going to shine. Kirk is a weapon himself. His mouth, his negotiating skills, his ability to turn someone and get them to relax and expose their weakness. He's excited at finding out that he's finally going to find out who did this and what he can do to verbally and intellectually maneuver them into a defensive position. So that's not a scared look, that's an all right, I've got them now look.
On screen. Do it! While we still have time.
On
Right now in his Kirk strategic and tactical mind, he is summarizing the top 5 plans that he can initialize against his enemy to overcome them.
screen, sir.
That, however, is his, oh, I didn't see that one coming. Look.
You still remember, Admiral.
I cannot help but be touched. I, of course, remember you.
What is the meaning of this attack? Where is the crew of the Reliant?
Surely I have made my meaning plain. I mean to avenge myself upon you, Admiral. I've deprived your ship of power, and when I swing around, I mean to deprive you of your life. But I wanted you to know first who it was who had beaten you.
Khan makes it sound here like it has been some big ongoing chess battle, or checkers, battle of wits, but all it was a sucker punch in deep space on Kirk's boatload of children.
Khan. If it's me you want, I'll have myself beamed aboard. Spare my crew.
And skipping ahead a little bit.
I give you 60 seconds, Admiral.
Clear the bridge.
So he knows who he's dealing with, he knows what he's got, and he has his plan. Now, his plan involves some command level confidential procedures, so that's why he called for a clear the bridge.
At least we know he doesn't have Genesis.
Ah, the perils of monologuing. If Khan had kept his mouth shut and hadn't revealed so much, Kirk wouldn't have this much to work with, and Spock by his side to help him out.
Keep nodding as though I'm still giving orders. Let's have it. Punch up the data charts of Reliance Command Console.
Reliance Command.
Hurry.
45 seconds.
The prefix code?
That's all we've got.
Now, exactly where the damage from this shot came from, whether it was phasers or photon torpedoes, it looks like a photon torpedo hit, wasn't shown in the initial battle. But it was in the initial strike, because right here we see Spock pointing out the damage in the primary hull that it received, and the view above him as well. So there must have been another additional photon torpedo in the original hit. Now, this slide is actually from Ships of the Starfleet. It shows the strike cruiser backing up, but you can see what the two red dots are the primary batteries and the primary hull. And there's where it looks like that hit is. He was trying to knock out more of the power of the Enterprise, or he was going for the phaser loop, because right about there is where that other hit occurs. Now, I think it was Khan's arrogance that made him think that just hitting this on one side would disable all the phasers. Remember, there is no power to the phasers, because after they get hit, Kirk asks Scotty, can you get me power to the phasers? And Scotty says, not but a few shots, sir. And that wasn't enough. So, knee banking on this blueprint of the power lines in the primary section of the Enterprise shows that he was trying to knock out the phasers so that Kirk would be totally defenseless. Now, let's sit back and watch.
Charts up, sir.
Admiral.
We're finding it.
Admiral.
Please. Please, you've got to give us time. The bridge is smashed. The computer's inoperative.
Time is a luxury you don't have, Admiral.
I'll interrupt real quick here. Another one of Khan's big flaws with his arrogance is that he doesn't notice that Kirk is at a command station, a command function station on the bridge. There's no library functions at the navigation console. If he'd been thinking, he would have been watching Kirk go to Spock's science station to bring up the information on Genesis. But he's too busy chatting with his crew, talking, thinking, oh, I've done it, I finally got him. It's just not fair, because Khan's arrogance is such a huge weakness to him.
Admiral?
It's coming through now, Con.
Reliance prefix number is 16309.
I don't understand.
You have to learn. why things work on a starship.
Each ship has its own combination code.
To prevent an enemy from doing what we're attempting. Using our console to order Reliant to lower her shield.
Assuming he hasn't changed the combination, he's quite intelligent.
15 seconds, Admiral.
Khan, how do we know you'll keep your word?
Oh, I've given you no word to keep, Admiral. In my judgment, you simply have no alternative.
I see your point.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
Soon, lock phasers on target and await my command.
Phasers locked.
Sulu chooses very carefully where to lock those phasers onto Reliant. He doesn't just choose center of mass. He is very smart where he points those phasers, and I'm going to show you why here.
Time's up, Admiral.
Here it comes. Now, Mr. Spock.
Sir, our shields are dropping.
Raise them!
I can't!
That's when Khan knew.
Where's the override? The override!
Fire.
Fire!
So basically what Sulu did to the Reliant was the exact same thing that Reliant did to the Enterprise. He took out the batteries around the impulse engines so that they wouldn't have backup power, and he also took out the main energizer by blowing out that huge impulse crystal. The shock from that explosion hitting the impulse crystal undoubtedly went down and damaged the main energizer so that Reliant would not have enough power to warp. This blue outline represents where the impulse engines are. Those 3 X's represent where the first phaser strikes hit the Reliant. And this big red X represents the impulse crystal, which is where the impulse engines and main energizer can share power. Very smart, well thought out. Maybe it's a standard operating procedure for disabling ships that have been hijacked by unknown parties, but this is what Sulu did. He knew his regulations, or he knew what to do. Kirk trusted him. This guy's been my phaser guy for so long, and he took out the everything that Reliant or Khan needed to be able to go out and do more space shenanigans.
Fire! Fire! We can't fire, sir! Why can't you? They've damaged the proton controls and the warp drive. We must withdraw. No! Sir, no! We must!
And of course it makes sense that those phaser blasts right there, right next to the main energizer and into the batteries, would disrupt the flow of power going up to the photon torpedo bar that they would require time to fix, which we see they eventually do get fixed. But right here, we'll take another look. XXX, sure, I'm sure there's some power conduit going out from there to the photon torpedo bar. Now, this shot always frustrated me. I mean, the Enterprise, in order to hit the impulse crystal in the engineering section, had to be above the Reliant. We see the phaser beams going down. We see the phaser beams hitting the top of the Reliant. Then I finally realized what the purpose of this view of this shot is. This is showing that the Reliant has been emasculated. You see the warp drive, you see the bottom of the ship. It's the... You know, we think of the belly of an animal or the belly of the ship as the vulnerable part. There's no photon torpedo, huge bay. There's no big phaser cannons. There's just the vulnerable belly of the ship, because Kirk has just emasculated her, emasculated Khan. There is nothing they can do to fight back.
Enterprise, wait. She's not going anywhere.
I did nothing. Except get caught with my britches down. I'm getting senile. Mr. Savick, you go right on quoting regulations.
So I think the real question here is Kirk really crediting Lieutenant Savick for saving the ship? Did he really forget the regulation about going to yellow alert when a ship hasn't established communications with them and is getting so close? Or is Kirk just feeling old? You know, he's only got 2 friends who he barely stays in touch with, as we see in the beginning of the movie. He has to wear these glasses that makes him feel like even more of an antique. I think would have remembered it, and that he's just kind of self-pitying himself here. That being said, I think Kirk's really feeling his age. He's really feeling old, and he's just laying down some vinegar for a self-pity party, because that can happen.
Meantime, let's find out how badly we've been hurt.
And here we see just how bad the Enterprise was hit in that initial attack. Right there in main engineering, right there by the main energizer, protected only by the yellow alert command that made the ship put up the force fields that reinforced the hull and fill in holes and everything. Amazing that we finally got to see graphics of ship damage. I think this is the first time we got to see that in all of Star Trek. Another historic first, and what makes this movie great.
He stayed at his post when the trainees ran.
The clincher about this is that wasn't just any midshipman first class engineer's mate that died from staying at his post and all the other trainees ran. If you read the book, Peter Preston was Mr. Scott's nephew, and he had been watching him grow and aspire to all things engineering in Starfleet and was very proud. You can see here when Kirk first comes on the ship and a bunch of the trainees are lined up, Kirk stops to talk to Mr. Preston, and you can see Mr. Scott in the background, and when he barks out with his proud trainee voice and chest puffed out, that Mr. Scott's chin goes up too. He's very proud of his nephew and has high hopes for him. And of course, those high hopes are played out in that Mr. Preston does save the ship, but he gives his life in doing so. And that's why that is such a tearjerker at the end. You have to read the book. There's so much in the book, Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, that is skipped over in the movie. I highly recommend reading it. It's a great book. It outlays the action, the characters, what they're thinking, what they're doing, lots of background. Also, go back, watch the movie again. There's so much character development and excitement in and messages for us as people in this movie. It is one of the best Star Trek movies ever, of them all. And one of the best movies ever made, period. And like always, thank you for watching. Click the like and subscribe buttons if you want to see more. If you enjoyed the content that I provided here. I know that I made a few comments in the tactical analysis that I haven't seen elsewhere. I think this is one of the best thought out space battles that I've ever seen in all of sci-fi, as well as in Star Trek. And I'd love to make more commentaries like this if I can get more subscribers and more support from people like you. So hit like and subscribe, and thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.